Good morning everyone, today we're checking out a brand new video from Goji Center. Last time, 16 hybrids walked into the Colosseum, and now 8 re-enter that Colosseum. Who will stand among them to face off against the Indom 2.0? Let's hop in and see which 8 have been selected to move on to the next round.
With the 2.0 scourging and multiplying its way across a dinosaur park and beyond, a call was put out to stop this monstrosity. Over 1,600 geneticists and engineers answered. Amongst the myriad of fantastic creations, less than 1% could make it into the top 16. And these 4 squads of 4, the cream of the crop, now stand their final tests. Now, just a refresher on the rules here. While we are putting these hybrids against each other in the competition, they aren't getting pitted against each other in an actual fight. You can think of this top 16 like a squad sent against the 2.0 horde. There is no question that each of them has the capability to kill an Indominus 2.0 in a head-to-head fight given the right circumstances, with either strategy, luck, or raw power. The question will be answering who would have the best odds in that head-to-head fight against our monstrosity.
Oh, so that's what this is. Huh, okay. So it's more like all 16 of them can kill it, but who would have the easiest time? Okay, my mistake.
All of the contestants will be pitted against a healthy adult 2.0 on neutral flat ground with more than enough space to maneuver. No setup, no ambushes, no tools, no advantages. A fair and square fight. The evaluation method was discussed in a previous video, but to recap, the aspects taken into account will be the following. Criteria number 1, which of these two is capable of bringing down the 2.0 in less time? Taking a larger percentage of the evaluation score is number 2. What will the health condition be after the fight is over?
Their own
will
health?
the hybrid remain unscathed, or will it be critically injured, or will it die after the fight? The next criteria...
I'm sorry, the way that thing just slinked down is hilarious.
And less heavy to the evaluation score is number 3. What is the likelihood of this animal being outsmarted in the fight? Finally, number 4, and the one that carries the most weight in the final evaluation score. How many fights out of 10 would the hybrid win against the 2.0? With this in mind, and with our aces lined up, now we begin to decide who is the champion.
Okay, this is gonna be nice.
1. In our first matchup, we have the greatest of our flying hybrids contrasted with one who arguably comes the closest to battling like their opponent. The differences between Vega and the 2.0 are mostly measured in increments rather than stark contrast. Essentially, everything it can do, its opponent can do to some degree or another, and vice versa. If the only deciding factor was who would take the least amount of damage dispatching a 2.0, the Valkyrie actually would come out victorious with far less damage. Relying on long distance, long-reach peck attacks, and dive bomb maneuvers, it could inflict lethal damage on even the 2.0 if it lands enough headshots. A beak that big, with that much force behind it, and this size can rupture bone and cause lethal brain damage. However, it is a glass cannon.
It's going for a skull soup.
It can certainly win without taking any major hits in return, but if the 2.0 manages to grab its aerial adversary, or not get back enough that it can get off a charge and tackle, it'll be curtains for the Valkyrie of Valhalla. Basically, Valkyrie would win if and only if it doesn't let the Indom land any hits in return. And that's unlikely given our scenario rules. A fight between the 2.0 and Predator Rex would be a slugfest, and no matter who wins, they might walk away with potentially lethal wounds. However, Predator Rex can stay
it's a little difficult
in the fight a lot longer because of its sturdier build, greater weight, and armor. Together, these two would be nearly unstoppable, but only one can continue on to the next round. Vega continues forth, with Valkyrie taking the first honored spot.
Predator Rex moves on
as a valuable ally in this conflict. Matchup number 2. Sometimes some of the best offense starts with superb defense, and these two embody that spectacularly. Gigantotherium has a greater advantage in reach, however, and maneuverability. Being able to
Mega Monkey
operate partially on 2 legs, it'll be able to turn and reposition a lot faster than its quadrupedal companion combatant. Ferropelta, meanwhile, doubles down on defense and would fight chiefly by having the 2.0 come to it. In a contest fought in the wilds, the 2.0 might be able to completely avoid the slower armored dinosaur by just staying out of reach, using projectiles in some limited capacity, or simply outrunning it. However, this is not a hunt in the wilds. This is a fight to the death in a set space with no tools. And when your best offense is your defense, whoever's defense falters first loses first. With that in mind, Gigantotherium absolutely does have superior offensive abilities, but it does come at the cost of its own protection. It's not fast enough to easily chase down the 2.0, so it would be forced to be reactive in its attacks. And while greater reach certainly can help, it's against an opponent that is more agile and capable of dodging and maneuvering quite quickly. It would still be a deadly opponent, and might take down just as many 2.0 that can take it out, but its armor is less extensive on the face, neck, and artery-rich areas like the joints. Ferropelta, meanwhile, would be taking far more hits, but it can afford to do so. Being low to the ground with a wide body and extending armor, flipping it over would be drastically harder to do versus the long-legged InGen Ankylosaurus.
Incredibly
Surprisingly enough,
difficult.
one of its best assets might actually be its jaws. With the 2.0 wisely trying to avoid the tail, most of its attacks would have to be directed at the face. And while it might be nimble enough to dodge slower charges and horn stabs, its feet and hands would be in grappling range by that sharp beak. Ceratopsian dinosaurs have the strongest bites of any herbivore to ever live on land. Seizing hold of a limb would prove a viable strategy to follow up with a charging rush or slowing down the 2.0 enough to whirl around for a tail strike.
Man, imagine it like chomping onto one of the limbs, doing a rush, and like just ripping that hand off. Or at least dislocating it.
Gigantotherium definitely brings better offensive options to the table for the coming conflict, but the literally ironclad defense of its comrade carries Ferropelta into round 2.
Boom.
Matchup number 3. These two would have
Theropod Rex versus the Armored
tightly different combat strategies on confronting the 2.0. The Theropod King would be able to end the fight a lot quicker thanks to greatly enhanced agility and maneuverability, hitting a sweet spot of size and speed to not be at a deficit for either. If it can seize the 2.0 by the neck, its powerful bite and shredding teeth could potentially open up the throat even with its foe's armor. However, Theropod Rex would be hoping for a quick victory in this comparison. If it turns into a more dragged out fight, or if it starts taking hits, its chances are going to diminish. By comparison, the Armored Titan is practically built for such an endurance match, taking arguably the most powerful land animal to ever live, another sauropod with superb reach, and giving it armor means it can take hit after hit without risking any shots to the vitals. It might wind up slashed, bitten, and bloodied, but it could weather the storm long enough to get a retaliation hit in and
I just realized, these sauropods will technically be the only creatures to actually make a successful tail whip. Well, I guess them and some other modern-day reptiles. Like the whip-tailed gecko and all that.
It may even be outsmarted by the
Not scorpions, though. That's more of a tail strike and not a tail whip.
2.0 in many cases, the fact that this hybrid would secure more victories regardless of being not as smart as the 2.0, and it being in better physical shape after said victories, this will be certainly helpful in advancing to the next round. Theropod Rex strikes hard, but bats a lower average than its larger counterpart and will be kept in reserve. The simple but effective Armored Titan shifts into the next round. Matchup number 4. Despite drastically different body types, these two armored herbivores arguably have similar strategies. Being reinforced and large enough to endure a fight, they are built to exploit potentially lethal assets to get a retaliation blow against their opponent. Tyrannoceratops has a potential one-shot kill ability if it gets a solid gore attack with those horns. Most types of body armor that still allow for flexibility, like what the 2.0 has, are still vulnerable to large, piercing attacks. And with horns,
there's a good quick stab to the chest and it'd be going down.
Even bigger than Triceratops's infamous arsenal, landing a hit like that is going to rend and rupture no matter what it strikes. That said, however, this armored horn head would need to be reactive instead of proactive. It can't waste stamina chasing down its faster opponent with a charge. This means it would be best suited to stand its ground and fence and lunge against the 2.0 instead of a full throttle charge. Mundosaurus, meanwhile, exchanges some of that maneuverability and directional attacks for reach. That tail tipped in a club taken from another sauropod is a near-perfect addition for congruency, on top of the stocky Apatosaurus-like body. While it would only be lethal in one lucky shot with a direct hit to the face, it would still bludgeon muscle and break bone on impact if it landed a blow across the rib cage or legs of its opponent. Its long reach also means attacking from anywhere but the front puts the 2.0 in striking range for the Munda first before the 2.0 can even get an attack off on its own. Similar to the Valkyopteryx, instances where the Mundosaurus was victorious would probably result in less injuries on it, since it would be able to kill off the 2.0 before it could get hurt itself. However, if the 2.0 can close the distance and either climb on top of its foe or attack from the front, it would stand substantially better odds. The Munda would still be able to eke out wins even in that disadvantageous position, but its counterpart, meanwhile, is much better defended. Lower to the ground, with more coverage for its armor, a thick frill shield to protect the neck, and still being light enough to throw its weight around to try and dislodge an attacker. Tyrannoceratops would get its opportunities to line up that lethal strike more effectively.
There's a
Not
good
to
quick
mention that the
stab.
horned giant isn't the most stupid either. Augmentations to this creature's brain means that this fella leverages its own defensive play with finesse, and is less likely to make miscalculations when attacking. A very close call, the armored hornhead proceeds past its cohort that remains on call for backup.
That is impressive.
Matchup number 5. Both of these resilient combatants can go the distance against their opponent. How they do it will be the deciding factor. Arctosaurus lacks any major critical weak spots.
Oh, I forgot that's what it looked like.
Aside from the underside of the throat, which would be hard to access considering its lower stance and center of gravity compared to its opponent. Additionally, its lighter weight means it'll be plenty agile enough to keep its business end pointed squarely at the 2.0. Outflanking it will be extremely difficult for its opponent. As soon as either gets in range of each other, it would be a bloody mess of gnashing teeth and claws once they get a hold of each other. Atherotitan, meanwhile, is probably the slowest animal in the whole competition, thanks to both its sheer size and extensive armor. That does, however, mean that it is also one of the hardest animals to actually meaningfully damage. Short of climbing on its back, which is risky business because it's not gonna just stand still and let itself get scaled Shadow of the Colossus style. There isn't really much important an opponent the size of the 2.0 can reach. The sauropod, however, only needs one good hit to make the fight count. In a protracted battle in the jungles, it would find itself in a big disadvantage if the 2.0 could try and ambush it time and time again before retreating under cover. The same kind of conditions wouldn't inhibit Arctosaurus, who would rely on rushing the other hybrid and getting inside its reach to maul it. However, this matchup, in a setting with neutral ground, it's not as much of the matter of who can win the fastest, but who can be left standing the most after they win. Arctosaurus could stand victorious, but it would be heavily mauled in the effort. Atherotitan, meanwhile, has a shot at winning the battle of attrition by staying in the fight long enough to land the hit it needs. For that, it proceeds on as the best frontline option, with its counterpart best serving as an ambushing backup against the 2.0.
Alright,
quick parenthesis here. You may have noticed that we're purposefully hiding some of the specifics of the evaluation methods on screen. That's because we aren't going to let you guys in on spoiling the entire tournament just yet. Just stay put, and we'll reveal the specifics at the end of the tournament.
Yeah, that's okay.
Number
that's fine.
6. Moving on to the next round, this round was actually one of the closest in the top 16. Spinovenator, aka Akira, relies almost entirely on speed and agility, but is still big enough and has lethal enough weapons to take a hit or two, and get that critical strike it needs to win.
About the same size.
Brontorax, aka Gilgamesh, is an armored tank, but one with surprising amounts of agility and maneuverability to put some speed behind that power. Both of these hybrids are very well defended, one with armor to take hits, and the other with agility to dodge hits. Akira would have a way towards a clean victory, whilst avoiding most chances of retaliation blows from its opponents.
He jumped on the
back of the neck and attacking the flanks or spine where it is hard to reach. Biting into it can prove a surprisingly nasty strategy, as it might result in a bundle of quills getting jammed into the 2.0's mouth.
Oh.
However, that kind of defense does mean that Akira is still put at risk of a nasty injury. It certainly is well defended, but its counterpart Gilgamesh would be able to weather hits much more easily. And unlike most of the other armored
Yeah, I think Gilgamesh is going to be the one that wins this fight.
hybrids, Gilgamesh does still have some predatory weaponry of its own. With its powerful jaws and sharp teeth it can use in tandem with sheer size and its spiny defense, allowing it to win a matchup with the 2.0 quickly with a swift trample and bite combo. For now, Akira will be kept on call for the critical role of dispatching the faster, younger 2.0 packs before they have a chance to grow in size or number.
Oh,
Out
that
of
would
the
be
final
actually useful.
16, Akira
Okay.
is the best at this task. Gilgamesh, meanwhile, proceeds on to the next round to fight the big ones. Matchup number 7. Both of these hybrids are heavily armored and would take a lot of abuse to finally get brought down. Lucano Venator steps into the fray with somewhat less defense in exchange for greater reactivity and agility, whereas its counterpart Armatus Gigantus instead maximizes raw size and defense. Of the two, Armatus Gigantus would be the one taking the most damage in most of the scenarios it comes out
Just
victorious.
full size.
Its armor is not entirely extensive across the whole body. However, that body is nothing to sneeze at either. It would be slow, it would have a hard time landing a hit in some situations, but it only needs to hit once. Even a glancing strike from the tail would mean the 2.0 just had multiple times its own weight smashing into it. If that doesn't kill, it would at the very least disable long enough for a follow-up stomp. And because Armatus Gigantus doesn't have extensively bulky armor, it would be able to land those hits more easily than if it was completely covered in spikes and plates. Venom doses from the 2.0 would also be staved off thanks to sheer size and a powerful immune system. Lucano Venator, meanwhile, would be substantially more reactive and able to brawl more effectively than its counterpart. What it might lack in seemingly lethal claw and bite attacks, it makes up for with speed and lateral armor that can stab and rend. Grappling it or
A
wrestling
quick, fast runnel and a gigantic
with
tank
it carries a
steel
hefty
wall.
risk of a saw-bladed tail swipe, and the lucky shot to the head or neck could be a death blow right out the gate. Deciding between these two is tricky. Despite the size difference, Lucano Venator would have actually done better against the 2.0 in a confined space like a forest. However, evaluating that fairly would be impossible because this competition needs neutral ground, as the
Neutral
tank of
with
its
nothing.
team would survive more close-up battles.
No trees, no rocks, no
Lucano
ripples.
Venator will be kept in reserve for deployments against 2.0s in jungle environments, as its colossally titanic ally proceeds on. Matchup number 8. This round was one of the hardest ones to call.
Ooh, the final
Both of these
matchup.
hybrids are powerhouse brawlers that can hit hard and take hits while still having plenty of dexterity. Nemi Faganex has some of the most devastating weapons
I forgot about this guy. God, I
in
love
the
it.
top 16.
I want that guy to be number 1.
Including one of, if not the most powerful bite amongst the roster. And with its stocky frame and powerful build, it would be able to weather a lot of abuse while landing these critical bites in the midst of a brawl. Its counterpart, Monstrotherium, trades some offense for more armored defense, while still having plenty of capability for brawling all on its own. A fight with either of these two pitted against a 2.0 would be a bloody, messy affair, if one of the sides didn't get a critical hit right out the gate with a bite to the throat. Both teammates are capable of grappling and following up with a devastating hit, while also not being so extremely heavy that they would be cumbersome. Based on raw stats such as weight and distribution, the 2.0 is still more agile than either of them. But the gap wouldn't be insurmountable with their own dexterity and great reach. While we determined that Nemi would actually kill faster given its greater bite capabilities, dexterity, and speed, and both hybrids' genetic contributors allowed it to be relatively equal in terms of smarts, the deciding factor came down to the type of armor and health after the brawl. In this specific evaluation round, this is determined by both criteria 2 and 4. While the crocodilian contributors on both the 2.0 and Nemi are very resistant to different forms of damage, the curved and thick claw shape of Allosaurus annex, previously referred to as Saurophagonex, is actually one of the most effective rending claw shapes in the animal kingdom. If backed up by sufficient force, this shape could pierce even the thickest hides, bolstered further by iron deposits present in both of these animals.
That's hot.
This means that this matchup, 2.0 versus Nemi, will be a bloody mess regardless of who wins. Its health will be affected more. An attempt to mitigate this was the addition of alligator DNA, animals that are known to reduce blood flow to injured limbs. This works to some degree, but not so well in the midst of combat. Depriving a limb from blood flow during use will end up working against both of these hybrids regardless, unable to carry oxygen to the muscle and take away lactic acid and carbon dioxide. Either you bleed and try to end the fight as quickly as you can, or mitigate blood loss and fight with a less functional limb. Monstro, on the other hand, is clad in armor that is more resistant to this certain type of weapon. Keratin scale armor from the pangolin bolstered with iron. While slower and more sluggish than Nemi, this armor would allow
So does that mean Monstro wins this?
Monstro to stay in the fight longer while fending off claw damage that would otherwise hurt Nemi more often.
I think it
Taking
is.
damage better with an effective immune system, a robust build, and lower center of gravity than its counterpart, we found that this creature would likely pull more wins. Granted, in a longer time, but also remain in a healthier state after each victory. It is a shame to see a formidable hybrid like Nemi be left behind this early, but he will be kept in reserve as the heavy assault striker to act as backup for the rest of the squad advancing to the next round. And with the conclusion of the first round, we can now eagerly anticipate what the results of the next contest of these aces will be. Keep in mind, the results of any of these comparisons could have wound up the other way had the random drawing selected differently.
Oh
So,
yeah, it
be
really
sure
could
to
have gone
congratulate
anyway.
those not proceeding on, as we prepare for round 2 to narrow down the results and find out who among this now final 8 will continue closer to determining the champion of the first great hybrid war.
Who will be the top of them all? Alright everyone, that's going to be the end to today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of y'all next time when we flick back on. Till then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.